Okay, so do you ever feel like you're watching a movie of your own life, but someone hit the mute button on the emotional soundtrack?
You mean like the highs aren't as exciting and the lows don't feel as low, and you're just kind of going through the motions?
And it's not that you don't care, it's just the feels are turned way down. You might be dealing with emotional numbness.
Emotional numbness. Yes, it's something we hear about more and more these days. And today we're going to really unpack it.
Yeah, Clint and I are taking a look at a really insightful Sandstone Care article, Emotional Numbness 7 Ways to Stop Feeling Dead Inside. We're going to figure out the whys, the hows, and most importantly, what we can actually do about it.
I don't know about you, but the name of that article, it really gets me. And that what's really interesting about this whole idea of emotional numbness is that it's not always a bad thing. It's actually can be a vital tool, like a safety mechanism. Imagine a circuit breaker in your house. It prevents the whole system from overloading.
Okay, so like a mental shield, because the article describes it as feeling emotionally blank or distant, right? But when does the shield become, more of a problem than an actual helper?
And that's the big question, isn't it? It's like, it's not about feeling nothing at all. It's more like everything's muted. Have you ever worn those noise canceling headphones?
All the time.
So at first, it's like peace and quiet in a crazy city. But then after a while, you start to miss things.
Right, and really you miss out on stuff.
You miss the music, the laughter, even those car horns that make up a city's symphony.
That's a good point, and I'm getting the feeling that actually recognizing emotional numbness in yourself, it's like deciphering a code or something, right? Like, what are some of those sneaky signs beyond just feeling blocked?
Oh, you're so right. It's not always straightforward. Sometimes it's about feeling strangely disconnected when other people are being emotional.
Interesting.
Even if you know logically that you should be feeling something too.
Okay, so like their emotions are on a different channel and you just can't tune into that.
Exactly. Or imagine this. Your friends tell you some amazing news, right? They're over the moon, but you're struggling to even get excited.
Oh, wow.
You even feel a little, uncomfortable with their display of joy.
Right.
That is disconnect. That's flattening your own emotional response. That can be a sign. It's not that you don't care. It's more like your emotional antenna is down.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about why this emotional antenna goes down in the first place. The article mentions some heavy stuff here. So, traumatic experiences, long term stress, even things like depression and anxiety.
Yes, it's like our brain is saying, whoa, too much. Hit the pause button on the intense feelings before we blow a fuse.
Okay, so it's kind of like a protection thing, right?
Exactly. It's important to remember it's not always a bad thing. Think of it like a spectrum. On the one end, we have short-term emotional numbness.
Okay.
It's totally normal, a natural reaction to stressful stuff. Like you're swamped with a project at work, and by the end of the day, you're just emotionally fried. That's your brain taking a break. But then on the other end of the spectrum, you have chronic emotional numbness. This is where it's been going on for weeks, months, even years.
Okay, so it's kind of actually about how long it lasts.
In a way, yes, it could be a sign of deeper issues, like maybe past trauma that hasn't been dealt with or underlying mental health stuff. It's the difference between a quick power nap and like a full-on hibernation for months.
And that's really when it's time to get some help, right? Because the article, it briefly mentions this link between suppressed emotions and anxiety. And honestly, I think we should explore that a little bit more.
It's almost like, when you try to hold a beach ball underwater?
Yeah.
You can push it down for a bit, but it takes effort and eventually, whoosh, it's going to pop up, often with even more force than before.
I love that analogy.
Emotions are kind of like that. Pushing them down, especially the icky ones, it doesn't make them actually disappear. It's like they just get stuck, and all that pressure, it builds up and then
anxiety happens.
Bingo, or other issues. And that's why understanding emotional numbness is so important because it can really mess with relationships.
Yeah, and the article actually talked about that, right? Like, so feeling disconnected even from romantic partners.
Absolutely. Here's another example. Imagine you're trying to have a deep, meaningful conversation, but you've got earplugs in.
You can't hear a thing.
Exactly. It's not that you don't want to connect. It's just that those emotional cues, those whispers, they're muffled. And when you're emotionally numb, it's tough to share your feelings and really listen to your partners.
Wow, so it really creates this gap between you.
A huge gap, misunderstandings, lack of intimacy, you drift apart.
So it's kind of like you're speaking different emotional languages from your partner. You can't quite understand each other's nuances. And what about past relationships? Because the article also talked about how trauma from bad breakups or whatever that can actually play a role in your life.
A huge role. It makes sense if you think about it. So, like, when someone's been hurt, let down, their brain steps in to prevent it from happening again.
So emotional numbness is like a defense mechanism.
Exactly, like building an emotional wall. Nobody gets in here, I won't get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is...
You also don't get to experience any of the good stuff.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword. You're safe, but you're also missing out on real, genuine connection.
Okay, so how do we even start to deal with this? Can we actually overcome emotional numbness, or is that it? Is it there forever?
Okay, good news. Emotional numbness, it isn't a life sentence. Remember, it's often a protection mechanism.
Right, so our brains being bodyguards, kind of, right?
In a way, yeah, but like any bodyguard, it can be a little overprotective.
Okay, so it's not that we're broken.
Not at all. It's just, it means we've learned to cope in a certain way. And the trick is to teach our brain new ways, healthier ways to handle things. Think of it like upgrading your phone's operating system. Okay, you're not erasing who you are, you're just getting better software to navigate the world.
Right, and what kind of upgrades do we need to combat this emotional numbness? Because the article, it mentioned this idea of building emotional resilience, which actually sounded really interesting.
Emotional resilience is key. It's like having a strong inner foundation. Yeah, it helps you weather all of life's storms.
So you don't get knocked down so easily, right?
Yes, it's about learning how to bounce back from tough stuff, manage stress, not lose it when things go sideways. And the cool thing is the article breaks it down into 5 main parts.
Pillars of emotional resilience.
Yes, like essential tools in your emotional toolkit.
And those tools were self-awareness, mindfulness, self-care, positive relationships, and purpose. What strikes me is how much they're all connected, like they actually work together.
100%. Take self-awareness, for example. It's about understanding your own emotional patterns, like what triggers you, what calms you down.
It's like having, what do you call it? Like a blueprint of your own emotional landscape.
Yes. And mindfulness, that's like learning to read the language of your body and mind. It helps you spot those early signs of numbness before it gets too late.
So not trying to ignore those icky feelings.
Icky feelings. It's just fun to say. No way. It's more like observing them. I don't know, a sense of curiosity instead of immediately reacting.
So like watching the clouds drift by. You don't try to change them, you just kind of see them.
Exactly. You learn to ride the waves of your emotions instead of getting totally wiped out by them. And that's where self-care comes in, giving yourself the tools and the resources to handle those waves, like a surfboard.
Okay, so self-care is like getting enough sleep, eating right, all of that good stuff, right?
Yes, and all that. Yeah, and it strengthens your resilience because when you take care of yourself, you're better equipped to bounce back from anything else.
It's like you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
You have to take care of yourself first.
Like when you're on the airplane, you have to put the mask over yourself. 100%. And there's also the power of, surrounding yourself with good people, positive relationships.
Our cheer squad, because the article talked about how important those supportive connections actually are, right?
Absolutely. They're like a lifeline when you're feeling lost and numb. People you can be real with, share your struggles with, and, they get you.
Right. It reminds you that, hey, I'm not alone in this. We all go through tough stuff sometimes. And then the final piece of the puzzle is purpose.
Finding your why. It gives you the drive, the direction that helps you push through those darker times.
Okay, so even if some things feel like blah, your purpose is like, but I'm still here for this.
Yes, powerful stuff.
It really is. Wow, like this whole conversation has been really awesome, honestly. So before we wrap up, what are the big takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
All right, first things first, emotional numbness is often a sign that your brain is trying to protect you.
Like a security system.
Exactly. It's not a weakness, it's a survival tactic. Second, it's not forever. With the right support, the right tools, you can absolutely reconnect your emotions and then build resilience.
And I think the most important thing to remember here is that even though it might seem scary at first, is to be willing to experience the full range of emotions, like the good, the bad, and the in between, because that's what makes life vibrant. That's what makes us actually humans and not robots.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Instead of fearing those feelings or judging ourselves for having them, what if we approach them with a little more kindness?
Yeah, like, hey, I hear you. Sadness, I see you, anxiety. What are you trying to tell me?
Exactly. It's a journey, not a race. And every little step you take towards understanding your emotions, hey, that's a win.
Well, Clint, this has been awesome, right? And listeners, thank you so much for exploring this topic with us. Keep an eye out for more of our podcast episodes featuring our favorite Sandstone Care articles coming soon.
Until next time, we'll talk to you later.